Hello there, and may the 4th be with you. My name is Ashleigh Heaton. I work in the marketing department here at Random House. I specifically work at the Del Rey imprint, which is our science fiction, fantasy, and horror imprint. This is our installment in Inside the House, where we take you behind the scenes in publishing to give you a glimpse of what we do here at Random House. So in a moment, I'm going to be bringing on Julie Leung. She is our Associate Director of Marketing at Del Rey Books. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about publishing in general or about the genre or our books, feel free to leave those questions in the little question mark box right at the bottom here. And we'll use that to answer questions throughout the stream. We'll get to as many as we can. We've got about half an hour here, but looking forward to hearing from you. So now I'm going to get Julie on the screen, so bear with me one moment while I get her going. Hi, everyone. Hi, Julie.
Hi, are we live?
We are live on the internet. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
I've got my Rose Tico necklace on as well.
I should have worn mine.
Subtle support, yes. Me and Julie do have matching Rose Tico necklaces. But Julie, how are you doing? And to kick things off, I think I wanted to ask you something that we get asked a lot. What is kind of your role here? What's a typical day like for you? And what do you do at Del Rey?
Yeah, so I am the marketing director for Del Rey, which is the science fiction fantasy imprint. I like to explain marketing like a book's biggest hype man or woman. So think of the author, think of the book. We kind of roll in beforehand and we basically bring all the buzzers, bring all the streamers. We try to match make the book with the perfect reader and make sure that reader knows about the book in the most easy way possible, whether it be social, be online ads, be it with getting influencers on board. We're a book's hype person, essentially.
Absolutely. And then another question that I think we get asked a lot is, how did you get into this industry? And if you have any advice for anyone looking to get into publishing?
Yes. I love talking about this question because my path into publishing is fairly untraditional. I was an English and journalism double major, graduating in the recession, so that was wonderful. But I moved to New York with a dream in my heart. I got a PR job, which again was not exactly what I wanted to be, but at an event in which I was doing PR, I met a person who was working on Good Morning America, who had brought his girlfriend to the event as well, and she worked in book publishing. And at the time, I was trying to hustle my way in, and so I ended up spending most of the evening talking to her instead of talking to him, and invited her out to lunch. And so basically when a position finally opened up in the children's department at Random House, she remembered me and my insistent meddling, and she invited me to interview for the job. So that's the main thing I think with publishing that is quite hard, is that a lot of it is personal networking and making authentic relationships first, and then when the opportunity arises, making sure you are that person that they remember. The other thing that I think really helped during the interview process was that I was already doing a lot of nerdy book things on my own. During my interview, I mentioned that I ran a Middle Earth parody Twitter account called Middle Earth PR, where I rewrote headlines from Lord of the Rings in a PR voice. And so I showed that to them during my interview, and I think that might have also made an impression as well. So if I had advice for anyone looking to get into publishing, go ahead and do the thing that you love doing. Like if you love books, write that blog, do that, Bookstagram account. And eventually when you get the opportunity to show them what you got, can already say, look, I am so good at this particular thing already.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
tell me yours, Ashleigh.
You what?
Tell me your story.
Oh, my story? Well, I think I followed slightly more of a traditional, but there's also I feel like cookie cutter traditional way to get in this industry. I think there's so many entry points that you can take. So it's hard to give kind of like evergreen advice. But I always knew that I wanted to work in publishing. I think I knew since I was in like 7th or 8th grade, I was like, I want to work with books one day. And so I, when I was in high school, I was doing, the newspaper thing and trying out as many like
Me
English things. I was
too.
on our literary magazine. I did all those things. So I
Shout out to those college newspapers, guys.
yeah. And then when I got to college, I majored in publishing, but then I also minored in marketing because I had an interest in marketing specifically. And then when I was in college, I did a couple of internships. I probably did more internships than I think anyone really needs. I did 4, which is nuts. But I think my advice is usually if you're able to get an internship and if you're able to get any sort of exposure or experience to the industry beforehand, I think that's so helpful because it's a creative industry and you have to think about your career creatively as well. I think a lot of people think that publishing is, like being an editor. That's the only concept that books have. But there's so much that takes making a book. So, I mean, the marketing aspect always appealed to me. I actually did an editorial internship, didn't like it. And then I did a marketing internship. And I was like, wait a second, this is where I belong. And so I would say, think about what you like, not just about publishing, but about books and what you specifically are good at and what skills you can cater towards a career. That's usually my advice.
To that point, I do feel like marketing oftentimes isn't someone's first thought when they think about a book career. And honestly, it's the best because not only do you not have to worry about getting into the weeds of like copy editing and working on a manuscript, but you get the book when it's pretty much close to final. And then you just think about fun, creative ways to build on the author's world. You think about sort of like, what does, their website need to look like? You need to think about who would be the perfect reader. So if you think of yourself as someone who is really good at recommending books to people and always are that person that's like, thank you so much for that recommendation, then you probably belong in marketing. Let's be real.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a look at our Q&A really quickly. We've got some questions in the house. So we've already asked some of the general questions about getting into publishing and what we do. Here's a really great one from Jelly Side Up. What exciting new things are you seeing in SFF and how do you market those new things?
Ooh, do you want to take this one or do you want to say one?
Yeah, I can kick it off and then we can fill the conversation. I think right now we're seeing a really exciting new trend of, own voices in sci-fi fantasy specifically. I think this is a time where, we're seeing more people of color and queer individuals who are coming forward and telling those stories that have really never been published before. And I think that is, I hate to call it a trend, because I don't want to, marginalize that.
Don't call diversity a trend.
Exactly. I don't want to call that a trend, but I am really glad to see all of those authors that are coming up to plate and telling those stories, because I think not only is it great for representation, but those are just unique stories that I personally have never read. And so I'm really enjoying a lot of those. And we publish a lot of those at Del Rey as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, like I grew up inhaling Lord of the Rings, Redwall, all the Arthurian legends, but I never once saw like someone from my own culture in those books at all. And one of the things that really just gets me so excited about the new generation of writers is that everyone is asking now, like, what are the hidden voices? What are the hidden narratives that never got told before? And how do I bring that to the genre that I traditionally loved but never saw myself in? So that is, again, also one of my favorite things that I'm seeing in the market today, especially in science fiction fantasy.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jelly Side Up, for that question.
Yeah. And again, that's part 2 of that question was, how do we market to that thing? One of the things I love about my job at Random House is that I often think about what are the book's natural champions. So I get a title, from a fresh perspective. I have to think about who's going to like come to this naturally. Like once they read it, they're going to tell all of their friends about it. And for every book, that's what we try to do. So when, something new and exciting comes around, I'm like, okay, well, who often talks about this book? Make sure that they know about it. Make sure that they have all the tools they need to like shout it from the mountaintops.
Absolutely.
All right. Do you want me to ask you a question? Do we have more questions from the audience?
We've got a couple, but let's do a little bit of us.
I want to talk a little bit about how science fiction fantasy marketing is a little different in that we do a ton of conventions. We go to New York Comic Con, we went to San Diego Comic Con, and what the experience is like doing that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this goes back to what you were talking about, is we're trying to find the readers where they are. And a lot of science fiction fantasy readers are at these comic conventions. And of course, in the time of lockdown, most of these conventions this year are canceled. But in the past, when we would go to those, we would, make sure that we have a booth, and we're at the booth, and we're just trying to get readers to come and talk to us about books. Sometimes we'll do free book giveaways. If we have a series that we want people to, pick up, we'll give them the first book in the series and say, hey, this is free because we know that you're going to love the rest. You just have to start here. We also have signings with our authors. They'll come to the conventions and they'll do free signings at our booth, as well as paneling at the conventions, whatever the convention has organized. And we also do book clubs, which is something new we started over the last year, where we send a select group of people who apply and want to be involved, and they get the book beforehand, about a month or two beforehand. They read it, and then we kind of have like a book club at the convention, which is really fun. And we get to talk to them about what they've enjoyed, what they didn't, and those are really great because those kind of, not only are they a fun book club and we get to talk about books that we love with other people, but we also get to see if there's anything problematic in our messaging. If we thought it was for a certain audience and they're not responding to it a certain way, or if a certain way that we've structured the copy. I think one famous example is we had a book club for Bonds of Brass by Emily Skrutsky at New York Comic Con, and out of that conversation, we found that the cover wasn't quite working for everyone. Everyone kind of was like, I don't know if this is the right cover for the book. And so we came out of that and we actually were able to make a new cover, which I think really speaks to the novel as it is. So that's a little bit of what we do. We're also just on the floor and having a good time with each other.
And I think it underscores sort of the key aspect of our jobs is that we want to hear from readers. Like Ashleigh and I work on books. We get into the tunnel of a book so deep that sometimes it takes outsider perspectives to be like, you know what, I love this book, but again, maybe the cover didn't really speak to me at all. And it is all about listening and being able to pivot when the readers tell us something that is, what they want. And a lot of our job is listening to you guys out there. Once you read, like, why did you love it? Why didn't you love, why didn't this speak to you? And we're always constantly learning so that we can make sure that you get the books that you want to read.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So today is May the 4th, which is part of why we are here, obviously, but that also brings me to my next question, which is that a lot of people don't know this, but Del Rey, we publish original trade fiction, which is, novels, normal novels that you'd see. But we also publish licensed books. So that includes Star Wars. We are the adult publisher of Star Wars books, as well as the Minecraft publisher. We've published Stranger Things books, Blizzard books. We have a huge list of licensed brands that we work with. And so I would love to hear from your perspective, what's kind of the difference in working on those two different brands?
Yeah, so I think from the trade, like original trade fiction, a lot of the work on the marketing side is to build buzz. It is typically an author who either the platform is new or perhaps it is established series, but we are trying to expand the audience for it. So a lot of that work is sort of building a fan base. What changes when you sort of move to a brand like Stranger Things or Minecraft or Star Wars is that fan base is already there. You need to know how to speak to them. And I think the reason why I enjoy my job so much is that I typically love everything that we publish because I'm already a geek girl at heart. So what we end up thinking about is like, how do we get the fans activated? How do we get them to come to this and feel like it's an authentic relationship, that we're not trying to sell them something. We're trying to expand their stories and their experience of stories with the brand that they already love. So it definitely is a shift where one is sort of, gathering an army, getting them together, getting them excited. Whereas the other licensing branding is really, how do we channel that excitement in a positive way? So those are the big differences.
Yeah, and I do think one thing, just from like a business perspective, is it means that you also have another stakeholder who comes to play. You know, because usually when it's just an author and an editor, there's those two people, the publishing house and the author, and they're work together to make the book that they want. But with a licensed brand, you're working with the author, the publishing house, and then the company that you're working with. So
Right.
Lucasfilm and Disney, or Minecraft, which is Microsoft. So that it does take a little bit more synergy, if you will, to make that happen. But yeah, absolutely. And I'm also gonna, as a reminder to anyone, if you have any questions, if you use the ask a question box down at the bottom, we'll answer questions there. I have seen a couple that have come through about being published and proofreading and all those kinds of things, which are great. But unfortunately, I personally do not have expertise in that. So I don't want to, I'm not ignoring those questions. I don't have advice for you, unfortunately, but we'll be doing more inside the house features over the next coming weeks. So hopefully someone else will be coming on who can answer those questions for you. But I did see one that I wanted to pop up here. So from Aniki Shriti 19. All right. So in this age of ebooks, Kindle, and audiobooks, what do you think the future holds for publishing houses? And I'd love to just kind of talk about how those different formats, influence our work.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is interesting about the science fiction fantasy genre is that you do see a lot of diverse formats. In particular, with the Star Wars books, there are a ton of audio listeners as well, right? And one of the things that we've sort of managed to pivot is that now with Star Wars books, we work much more closely with our audio team and create audiobook originals with stories in that vein. Well, if that's the format they like, how do we continue creating content that they will naturally gravitate towards? Ooh, am I coming through still? Uh-oh, audio issues. We've had to pivot very quickly from planning physical conventions where we're all crammed into a convention hall together, spreading our germs, getting con flu, and now we have to rethink everything in terms of digital events and how do we still maintain that awesome in-person relationship with everyone, but over the internet. And luckily, we've definitely done a bunch of events in that vein. We've gotten, we did a virtual con recently with Penguin Random House on April 24th, where we had a ton of authors doing exquisite quotes on Twitter. They were doing live readings on Reddit, and we were doing a bunch of giveaways. And so we basically try to reimagine a traditional convention space, but online. Another thing that I'm really happy that we ended up doing is that we ended up launching a podcast. And I don't know if Ashleigh is able to get back into audio yet. Test? Yes, she's back. Talk to them about our podcast. Okay. Ashleigh, I think Ashleigh's audio might be cutting out a little bit. So I will take it back from where she was. So we launched Dell Radio as a way to just talk about how we're staying sane in quarantine, all the geeky, nerdy things that we're doing. But also we wanted to feature our authors in a more conversational format. Now that they don't have the opportunity to meet their authors on panels or see them in a signing line, we still want to sort of provide a channel for them to connect with our authors in a more personal way. So we ended up doing Dell Radio, which we have it posted up as a comment. It's on Spotify and iTunes and basically anywhere else you would listen to your podcast. And we post every Wednesday. So tune in, out right now. And yeah, and yeah, I think audio on Ashleigh's side is a little tricky right now. So I think if you have any questions in the comment section, I can try to answer them. Ashleigh, are you back on? Okay. Well, anyhow, I mean, I feel like the last part that we didn't really get to talk about was books that we are really, really excited about that are coming out later this year. In particular, I really wanted to talk about Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. If you guys are a fan of Gothic horror, with like, you know, a cousin writing you a letter to tell you to quickly visit her. She thinks her husband's poisoning her. And I can't speak, you know, about this book enough because it is so exciting. The fashions and the drama and honestly the melodrama is so exquisite. Definitely look out for that book coming out June 30th. The other book that is, since it's Star Wars Day, we're really, really excited about Star Wars High Republic, which is a new storytelling era that's opened up for publishing only. And this is takes place right before Phantom Menace, in the height of the Jedi's power, and it's coming out later this year as well. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And yeah, and then there are two more books. Max Brooks is publishing Devolution. If you guys know him from World War Z, that honestly kind of very prescient and forthcoming book about zombies and pandemics. He's got another book coming out in June about Bigfoot, which I know it sounds a little crazy, but it really is an incredible takedown of how we are over-reliant on technology and what would happen if you are isolated in a cabin under attack by beasts of nature without any of our common tools that we have available to fight that off. So keep an eye out for that as well. And yeah, I think also check out our newsletter. So in addition to the podcast, social media, and all the things that we end up talking science fiction fantasy for, we also have a newsletter that we send out periodically just to let you know about books that we think you would be interested in. And again, every book that Ashleigh and I work on, we love. And I think it comes through in the fact that, you know, we are huge geeks, and when we sort of acquire books, we bring the entire team together. So marketing, publicity, and sales get involved in the books that we pick, because not only do we think the editors are you know, choosing a book that's important, but they want to make sure that there's going to be that hype team surrounding that book, making it the best and biggest possible book imaginable. So yeah. See, Ashleigh, do you have audio coming anytime? Nope. All right. Well, let me scroll through the comments real quick and see if there's anything that we missed. You know, for anyone out there who is an aspiring writer, honestly, the best thing to do is continue to work on your craft, get an agent, and from that agent, the agent will do the work for you. So, you know, we are marketing. We don't ever get to make, you know, the ultimate decisions for landing a book, but if you can get an agent, that agent will be your advocate and fighter in the publishing world. So get one. All right, what's one of the most fun things you've done for a book? Oh man. All right, so one of the things we ended up doing for Max Brooks's Devolution was a card game. So Ashleigh and I do a ton of board games. It's a Bigfoot attack, and you are a collaborative group trying to kill that Bigfoot by flipping cards and getting resources to fight them off. Unfortunately, we produced them. We weren't able to distribute them to conventions this year, but I believe we've created a digital version of it. So we will post that up on our social media, Del Rey Books, for you guys to take a look at. And yeah, so it's really, again, marketing is often just taking a book and trying to come up with promotional ideas that are true and authentic to the book itself, and also hopefully reaches the right reader. In this case, we hope that it reaches a ton of board game players, because we are board game players ourselves. All right, and how do you join the book club? I think the best way to join any future book clubs is to follow us on social media and the newsletter, and we will let you know when the next virtual con goes live, and make sure that you submit your info, and we will randomly select people to join essentially our book club / focus group. Any chance dystopian will be making a comeback soon? You know, there are a lot of great dystopian novels out there right now. One of our books, Chuck Wendig's The Wanderers, weirdly predicted this so closely that it's a little frightening. And but what dystopia does best is sort of hold a mirror to our current day existence and sort of show the future, 10 seconds, 15 minutes into the future. And this is, again, like, great dystopia does that, and it makes us think about sort of the dangers of the path we're currently on. So I would say dystopia is currently strong and alive. I do think that fantasy tends to be the genre of choice, given that a lot of people might be exhausted by how dystopic the world is in real life. So we found a ton of upticks in the fantasy genre as well. So I think, again, people do different. They kind of go back to different motivations when they want to read. Like, some escape, some people want to read to really understand what's going on right now. So to each their own. Cool. And I think we are about at the hour. Ashleigh and I have a positioning meeting after this, which, again, to go back to what marketing is all about at Random House. A little bit. I think it's a little lagged. But we're about to hop into a positioning meeting where we're looking at books in the spring and talking about, again, who the target audience is going to be, how are we going to reach that target audience, and when should we talk to them. So that's happening. And again, publishing works a year in advance. So we're talking about books that are coming out in spring of next year. And if, aspiring writers out there, if you sell your book today, that book won't hit the shelves until a year or 2 years later on down the road. That's the rate in which publishing works. And that's only because we have to work on with so many people: booksellers, librarians, educators, consumers. We got to get the drumbeat going on a ton of titles very, very much far in advance before all of the magic happens on the bookshelf itself. But yeah, so again, we love to talk about science fiction, fantasy all day, every day. Please check out Dell Radio and our newsletter and our social media to get all the stuff in. And happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.